LinkedIn. Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Russo. I am the CEO of the Palm Beach Tech Association, joining you for another community coffee here on Monday at noon. I'm drinking Subculture coffee today. Classic, if you've not been there, downtown West Palm Beach, Jupiter, downtown Delray. Great coffee, great environment if you're also looking to get stuff done. With that, we're having a conversation today on resources for online technology education. And we're really lucky to have three awesome organizations represented. They're all members of Palm Beach Tech. First of all, we have Todd Albert from Boca Code. We have Hannah Shea, who's an alumnus from Wyncode Academy. And we have John Lightfoot, who's an alumnus from WGU. And Todd also is a former college professor. So we're going to talk a lot about online education today and how you as a potential learner could learn a few things from them about how to go ahead and take some more educational steps in your career, especially as we're not able to be in person anymore, and also just hear a little bit of stories about their background, education, their journeys, how they've come to be. So I'm really excited about this. I mean, I for one went to a college that, we weren't in class all the time. We did hybrid, and I found that really cool, except for the fact that, I didn't get as much done as I think a lot of people would have expected. But now with the advent of technology, it makes online learning just a whole new avenue to approach. So with that, I would love to start with, we'll go with Hannah, Todd, and John in terms of order, and just give a little bit of background about yourselves. Tell us who you are, what you do. Tell us a little bit about your background with each institution, and feel free to have whatever conversation you'd like to have on the call with us today. So we'll start with Hannah and go from there.
Thanks so much. I recently graduated from Wyncode Academy in the full stack web development program. Prior to that, I was working for SoulCycle, running their business operations out of Coral Gables. And I consider myself newish to the South Florida area. I moved here from Austin, Texas about 2 years ago, where I went to UT and was working in startups and whatnot. So it's always kind of funny to think that I left Austin to come to Miami to learn how to code, but it's worked out perfectly, and I'm actively on the job hunt now, but really excited to be here with you guys today.
Great, Hannah. Welcome to the South Florida Tech community. So I'm Todd Albert. I come from all over the U.S. In fact, I was born in Texas, but lived in almost all four corners of the U.S. I traveled a lot for my education. Took me all around the U.S. As part of it. I've gotten degrees from several universities. I've worked in academia for a long time. Been programming since I was, knee high, and which is a long time ago. More, many moons ago. I've been programming since, back before the Commodore 64 days, and, love it, always loved it, but kind of pushed towards science and got an academic background, became a scientist, did some work for NASA, started my own programs, but really loved teaching, really loved the programming, really loved using programming for data analytics and modeling and building websites and all kinds of things. And eventually left academia and came, full-time into software development when I came back to South Florida for the third time. And, that's what I've been doing. And been hiring a lot of developers. I've hired students from Wyncode and IronHack and, a lot of the code schools. And one of the things that I really realized is we've got these amazing code schools down here in South Florida, but they're all down in Miami. And we don't really have like that solid, Wyncode / IronHack level of code academy up here in the Palm Beaches. So, I'm putting together my teaching hat and my software developer hat and my entrepreneur hat. And that's why we're launching Boca Code here in launched Boca code here in Palm Beach. So that's the latest. So that's me in a nutshell. John.
Hi, everybody. My name's John Lightfoot. I'm actually up here in the Orlando area, one of the suburbs, Lake Mary. I'm originally from South Louisiana, though I was born in Texas, also up in Lubbock. We only lived there for a few weeks. I did most of my growing up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I moved to Florida in 2005 as a Hurricane Katrina refugee, and worked a lot of odd jobs, working in restaurants, did some security work. This was all after my 8 years of the Army National Guard. Doing a lot of odd jobs and stuff. Always had a love for IT and computers. I was always the typical computer geek in high school, coming out of high school. I tried my luck with traditional brick and mortar university. I made it exactly one semester at Southeastern Louisiana University, and then went back on active duty with the Army because it just wasn't for me. I kind of lucked into an IT job as a contractor with Verizon, working on laptops, doing, help desk type work, but kind of hit a wall, to get a employee to even apply for an employee position in Verizon's internal IT department required a bachelor's degree. I wasn't even allowed to apply without. So working with Verizon as a contractor and then working with my eventual hiring manager, we kind of all came to the conclusion that I needed to go to school and get my degree. Unfortunately, I already had 2 kids. We had just found out that I had twin boys on the way. I didn't think there was any way whatsoever, I would ever be able to get to, a traditional school again. And I didn't have the time, working full time, soon to have 4 kids, twin newborns. It just wasn't going to happen. So I originally went to looking for, an online option, something that I could do in my spare time. And luckily I was able to find WGU. I graduated with my bachelor's of general IT in 2016. I decided to keep going straight through and got my MBA a year later in IT management. So after the bachelor's, I was able to get an employee position. After my MBA, I was actually able to apply for IT security, which I had some passion in. And today I'm a incident handler and cyber threat analyst for Verizon's internal cyber incident response team. So thanks.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us, everyone. And, I know we got a few folks who are going to be a few folks that are either watching us on live on social media or are here in Zoom with us. If you'd like to ask any questions throughout, just the way we go about it is either if you're on Zoom, you can put up your hand or you can pose your question into the chat for anybody. Or if you are online, you could just comment and we'll read that off and throw it to the folks here as well. So with that, we'll start with you, Todd, and I would love to kind of, hear your background from an educational perspective as an educator, kind of help frame the conversation here a little bit. And you come from a background of not teaching technology. So I think that'd be very, very clear. Your background as a university professor was actually in weather and climate and not in tech, which is pretty unique, but you come from that background. And how would you explain the advances of, online education, looking through that lens as an educator from here we are, going to the classroom every single day to now, hey, we're all online almost for everything now, and the pros and cons that might go along with that?
Yeah. So, I mean, you're right. I didn't really start off teaching technology, right? I was teaching more in the sciences. Although I did teach GIS, I taught remote sensing and did teach several computer programming courses, which I really loved. It's really interesting. I'm a classroom guy. I love in person. And in fact, Jen, who's one of my coworkers who's on the call, she's been pushing me since this whole thing started, get online, teach online. And I'm like, no, I've been resisting her. And the tools now definitely, like you said, Joe, the tools have improved so much. You know, all of us have gone, well, except for John, who's been working remote for the last 2.5 years. He said, you know, but most of us have moved from this world where we were going to work every day and we were having our meetings face to face, or going to school every day, having our classes face to face, or our kids were doing that, to moving online and doing this kind of thing where we're doing Zoom meetings, and we're, you know, we're not all in a conference room sitting around a table like a typical meeting. We're meeting over video, and it certainly, you know, it loses some of the personal touch, but you know, it's also, there's a convenience factor as well. You know, Jen might not have had the time to jump on this, you know, 1 hour call if she had to drive a half an hour both ways to do it. So, you know, some of you are attending because you're like, oh, I could pop in for 20 minutes and then jump out. Whereas, you know, if you had to drive somewhere to go do that, you might be less inclined. So there's certainly advantages, you know, in terms of learning online. You know, there's kind of, you know, the types of programs where you can go at your own pace, and, you know, you're not necessarily on a schedule. Um, so, you know, there's some advantages to that. But, you know, those types of programs, I feel like what you're sacrificing is like what Hannah got at Wyncode, which was not just the learning, but also the community of going through with her cohort and, you know, meeting her classmates. I mean, I'm sure Hannah's going to echo this, and, you know, and some of that I feel like, you know, you're sacrificing, but it also really depends on the format of your class, right? So, you know, you have these classes that you can take like through a Udemy type of a course where, you know, you can take it at your own pace, and maybe it's a 400-hour course, but you could take it over, you know, over 4 weeks if you really wanted to put the time in, or you could take it over 4 years, but you're not developing that community and that network, versus, you know, like a Wyncode or an Iron Hack or a Boca Code, taking a class online where it's live like this, where you're really, you know, I mean, here, you know, some of us have just met for 5 minutes and we're developing a rapport. You go in day after day after day with the same people, you develop these relationships, and those are things you're going to carry with you outside of the course. So, you know, keep that in mind if you're making decisions about taking courses online. Is how important is that, are those connections to you, and you know, that network that you bring with you.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think that's the one thing that we all miss right now too, that we hit on, is community. And you know, either that be through work or through class or education. That's a unique thing that I didn't really, you know, think about when we were thinking about education. But, you know, with that, Hannah, would love to kind of hear, you know, from your experience then, with Wyncode. I would assume that you did in person, of course, and you know, had some sort of online bit. But tell us, what was it like being a code school student, and, you know, how has that kind of helped you propel to where you are today?
Yeah, so we started in person, and then the last maybe like 2.5, 3 weeks were remote. And it was honestly like a pretty seamless transition where everyone was like, okay, this is happening. We just have to roll with the punches. And the instructors and the TAs were awesome as far as like making sure that everyone still was engaged, accountable, you know, not like taking a Zoom call from your bed, which I'm sure can be pretty tempting. But, you know, we were working on our final projects, and it was a lot of stress, but we had TAs there, you know, until about 9 p.m. And it was really, I was surprised by how well everything came together and worked out. Um, I found out about Wyncode through one of my neighbors who had previously done the course. And I worked in tech prior to this, and it was always like, you're either the marketing girl or the HR girl, and there wasn't like a lot of space for you to do much else, or you at least didn't see a lot of women doing anything else. So I was a contractor at Facebook for a while, and you would see the developers, and it was kind of like the developers in a cave, and they're all, you know, working, and it just didn't seem personal. And I didn't see anyone like me. So I kind of assumed that it just wasn't going to be an option for my future. But then, you know, I met a girl in my building who did Wyncode, came out, immediately got a job, and you know, her career is completely taken off. And I was lucky enough to be able to do the program with one of my good friends. And so the social part is the thing that I probably missed the most, because doing a code academy is it's a really unique experience that not a lot of people can relate to, where, you know, we were at school from 10 a.m. until 9 p.m. working on projects, doing homework. You know, none of my friends could relate to me like having a JavaScript crisis, or, you know, like trying to solve a problem. But it was really nice to have, you know, one of my good friends there with me, so we could kind of like hash things out and work on things together. And even though we went remote, everyone was so accessible. And even after graduating, I think I talked to my instructor probably twice a week, and I talk to TAs and go back and forth. And so you do really have that community and the alumni group of like nearly 900 people. So I know that if I like being in the job market right now, I've been just like hammering out LinkedIn messages every day to people who went to Wyncode or people who went to UT. And I think, you know, similar to what you were saying, now I think people are more willing and open to talk about their career and how they can help you and how you can network, but just in a totally different way now. So yeah, Wyncode was a really awesome experience for me, and I'm happy that I did it when I did, because I would have been unemployed either way at this point. So I'm really happy to have like an arsenal of new skills that are really in demand and can be useful, especially to be down here in South Florida where the tech, you know, the tech community is growing a lot.
And
Hannah, you said, sorry.
Wyncode also has a Slack channel for all of those alumni too, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we have like a huge Slack channel, and everyone is always posting things, and there's a little help channel. So I mean, people who graduated Wyncode 3 years ago are still in there and are still like actively helping you or asking questions on their own. So that's been really nice. It's just feeling like, you know, you're not dumb for asking a question, because you know that there are 800 people who are willing to help you out.
Hannah, I'm really curious. You said that you went through with one of your friends.
Yes.
And do you think that, you know, you said it as kind of an advantage where you had somebody that you were able to bounce ideas off of and talk to, but do you think that it held you back at all from connecting deeper with other people in your cohort?
Well, that was at first, that's what our this woman Vasti, she was the kind of the person who made sure that everything went together and flowed properly, and everyone was, you know, crossing their T's and dotting their I's. She was trying to break us up immediately, and like I get it, you know, but I feel really lucky that there were so many good people in our cohort, and everyone came from different walks of lives. And I had so much respect, because it was like almost 50-50 men and women. There were women who have, you know, 3 kids and were working, you know, full time, and other people who were pursuing MBAs. There were a ton of veterans. There was someone who was
Maria's waving her hand when you said that. Like, yeah, me too.
yeah, and people there was a girl, Jaboa, who was a train conductor in Colorado and came to Miami to do the program. And so it was really cool to see everyone from a different walk of life who was interested in, you know, making a big transformation.
Especially since your experience at Facebook was that there was no one like you, right? Everyone was like a clone that were developers. And now you go to Wyncode and you see like all the diversity. So that must have really helped you in that regard.
And it lifts you up too, to be like, I can really learn anything, you know, and I think I had that moment where it was like, okay, I've been doing the same thing for the last couple of years. Like I haven't really sucked at anything in a long time. And this was the first time that I like really sucked. And it was like, it was,
Thank you for being honest.
yeah. Oh my God. It was like, it was the hardest 11 weeks of my life, but it made me, you know, relearn how to learn new things. And,
You
you
might
know,
want to leave some of this off in the job interviews, though, that you're going on.
I think, you
Tell
know,
them like, oh, it was a natural fit. I just love programming.
I
It was,
slept and then I learned JavaScript and React in like one night. But it, you know, I wish that's how it worked, but that's how I think a lot of boot camps are. It's what you put into it. And if you just go and, you know, don't do as much as you can, if you only do the minimum, then you're not going to get as much out of it. So I think that that was an advantage to a lot of people, is that, you know, you're paying money, you have a lot on the line, this has to work. So, you know, that kind of lights the fire to make it happen.
since we're
With,
talking about,
well,
sorry, go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
yeah, I know. I gotta loop John into the conversation here a little bit too.
Who's
So,
John? Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, Todd, you owe him a beer now. So, John, we'll I would love to kind of hear from your perspective with WGU in adding to all this, right? So, you know, Todd, we talked a little bit about in-person, you know, classes. You know, Hannah, you're coming from more of kind of the code school perspective here a little bit. And WGU is a unique hybrid of degree programs, but mainly online. So, you know, can you talk us a little bit through? I know you already hit on a little bit, but what was the experience like? And you know, how have you been able to kind of use that experience, maybe some of the other folks that you've had that experience with, and be able to get to the position you're in now, where you have gone through it, you do have an education, you do have that degree, and that's kind of giving you a little bit more to work with here in your career.
Yeah, so with WGU, it's a little bit different when it comes to that community. While there are live options for, you know, classes and coursework and stuff like that, you're not guaranteed to be with the same folks, you know, every time that you're getting live instruction. Every time it's going to be a new little group. But I did notice that even though it was new folks in each cohort, you're kind of all in the same boat. You know, you're all trying to accomplish the same thing. And like Todd was saying earlier, we were only talking for a few minutes and we were already kind of building that sense of community. I felt that every single time I was on live instruction on these cohorts. You know, you're getting on with the instructor. It's usually a fairly small group. You know, sometimes you'd get on, there's only 5 or 6 students. Sometimes you'd get on, there's 20 or 25, 30 students. But you were able to ask questions in real time. You were able to build a rapport with that instructor. Even with your fellow students, there was a few times that we contacted outside of the cohort because, you know, we were asking sometimes the same kind of questions. So I think it really helped. You're not going to get that same group every time. You're not going to see them in person, obviously, because we're all online. But you do kind of get that sense of community. And I think that translates well, at least in my line of business as an incident handler. Every time I'm working an incident, I have a new group of people that I'm working with, you know, bringing in different teams, bringing in different organizations, people with different specialties. Every single time, you know, it's always a new experience. So I think that really helped me being able to try to build a rapport with folks quickly. Even if it did mean I sacrificed a little bit of that social aspect of, you know, the university, you know, lifestyle, I guess, if we want to put it that way. You know, pros and cons on both, but it did help, at least, you know, when it comes to running projects and running incidents, for sure.
So it was much as a learning experience in terms of being able to, you know, work remotely in the future as well.
Yeah, and you know what? It took a lot of self-discipline that I didn't know I had at the time. And being able to build that self-discipline, you do have some levels of accountability in WGU, of course. You know, your course mentor that you're working with, and then your student mentor who you speak to once or twice a month, sometimes every week, depending on how you're doing. So you do have accountability, but you don't have somebody sitting there holding your hand the whole time saying you need to be working on this specific assignment during this specific time. And that took a lot getting used to. But when it translated to work, you know, since I've been in IT at Verizon, I haven't had any micromanaging managers. Thankfully, maybe I just jinxed myself. But that translated incredibly well to the work I'm doing now. Everything that I went through at WGU.
And
What do Hannah spoke about coming to this world, as a woman, and, her initial experience was that it was very male dominated. Do you have, and, can you tell us about your experience coming to this world as a veteran coming from, from the military service?
Yeah, I mean, you usually found, at least I found with my veterans groups, that whatever kind of profession you were in the military, you kind of transition that into civilian life. I was a military police officer in the Army. It was not a fun job very often, and I didn't even think twice about not getting into local law enforcement when I got out. It just wasn't for me. Coming into the workforce, though, I kind of feel I did have some privilege there. I might have gotten an interview where I probably wouldn't have otherwise. But, trying to translate the self-discipline from the military, the ability to, communicate with others effectively, if, still having to learn some interpersonal skills. I was able to utilize those skills and make use of the opportunity that it gave me. I think it would be the best way to put it. And then, the main reason I looked into WGU is because I looked at a list, top 10 schools, online schools for veterans, and WGU was number one and has been several times. If I do remember right, Jessica, correct me if I'm wrong. And I see a lot of veterans coming in, and like Hannah was saying, when I started at Verizon 10 years ago as a contractor, there was one female in my organization. The IT security organization that I am right now is almost 50-50. So we see a lot of veterans coming in. We see a lot of women coming in. I think it's just great for everybody all around, for the company. It's been nice.
Yeah, the diversity in this field is just exploding right now. It's really awesome to see. And in fact, I pay a lot of attention to the stats, like nationally. It's easy to find the stats through organizations like Course Report. And what they're finding is that, the numbers of women in particular in code schools is now, it's over 30% now, and it's rising very quickly. So, what Hannah saw, where half of her class was women, that's starting to become the norm now, which is really, for old guys like me who've been in tech since, the dinosaur age, it's really awesome to see like all of the women coming into tech. It's and we do a lot like with Palm Beach Tech and Women in Tech and Girl Develop It and these other organizations that we support for that reason. And veterans and other underserved groups. That's something that, Jen, who's on my team, is working really hard at, how do we serve all these other communities? And that's really important. And I think it's not unique to Boca Code. I think that's, you look at all the good code schools and they're doing the same thing. How do we serve people like John and Hannah and other underserved groups in the community?
Yeah,
and I'll say
with that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, John. You go.
I was just going to say it's been a real inspiration for not just myself, but my daughter, who's starting high school this year. Ever since, she was in 5th grade, she's been telling me that she wants to be an engineer, either civil or electrical. My director, who is a female veteran, so she checks both boxes, is her mentor. They speak on a fairly regular basis. And my
Jen's
daughter
smiling.
just got
She probably knows her.
just got accepted into the Lyman Engineering Academy here in Orlando. So she'll be going to an engineering focused and IT focused magnet high school, which is just awesome.
That's fantastic. Congrats.
So I want to pivot actually to diversity for a second too, because I think the last few weeks too have really shown a really important light on that in the tech community, which traditionally is not the most diverse business industry out there. And we've had that conversation on gender specifically in the last few years. Wyncode has pledged a rather large effort to make sure there is an even balance. And we talked to Joe and Yuha Nicola, who are the co-founders of Wyncode, a little bit about that in our podcast a few weeks ago, of making sure that they can reach that 50% equality in their programs. And have done so through a lot of scholarships and a lot of investment, a lot of recruiting to be able to do that. And on our part, as an organization, this year, 30% of our board, 33% of our board is made up of women and the other 2/3 men. But it is a really interesting time to be in technology because the barriers have gone down, right? There's a lot less mental, barriers, because people have become more aware of that and are becoming more welcoming to all people, no matter their backgrounds. So I'd be curious if you all have any stories or have any anecdotes of ways that you've seen that, ways you've seen the community become more inclusive in your time, and with that, of anything that you've maybe been a part of in doing that as well.
I'll just go back to the fact that 10 years ago when I started, my direct supervisor was a female, and she was the only female in the entire organization. That is not the case today. My director's a African-American female veteran. My executive director is a female. There's a ton of diversity all through all of the IT organizations in Verizon, and it just wasn't like that 10 years ago at all.
Yeah, I actually, when I was working on my PhD, the woman whose desk was right beside mine, her name was Sandy, awesome woman. She was actually working on her second PhD, which I didn't understand. I'm like, why are you getting a second PhD? And what happened was she originally went into engineering, and she went to a university, an engineering school where it was all men. It's all these, old white men, and they shunned her through the entire program. You don't belong here. What are you doing? You're a woman. She'd be in classes where she'd be the only woman. And it made her so angry that she, even though she no longer wanted to be an engineer, she stuck it out to get the PhD just to like stick it to them. So now she was doing a second PhD just because she got that first one out of spite, even though it was not in a topic she wanted to do. But it was fantastic having her on our team because she brought these engineering skills that none of the other students had, and it was really fantastic to see. But like John said, and like even Hannah's seen, who's probably half my age, you've seen just over the last few years this big shift in the number of women in the tech sector, and just diversity in general, every type of diversity. And I think that's in no small part to organizations like Palm Beach Tech and code schools like Wyncode that are dedicated to this, dedicated to diversity and supporting diversity in the tech community.
Yeah, I think that that's true. And for the final project that I worked on, I really wanted to show how technology affects every community and can elevate every community. And so we built a web application to help people who are in a state of crisis. So if you're in an abusive relationship or you're a victim of human trafficking, and have it be like a smoke and mirrors situation where it looks like a yoga meditation website, because that's like the most unassuming thing ever. And I feel like most people have one of those on their phones these days. And then once you hit the help page, it brings you up to a list of different organizations central to Miami that can help you. And you think about the people who are mostly affected by these issues, and it's normally minorities. And so having technology to be able to serve other people who desperately need it was really awesome to build. And it was really cool because our team was 3 out of 4 were women, and it was just an awesome experience to be able to like collaborate with other people and learn other people's experiences, and show that like no matter what your background was, if you don't have a a traditional tech education, you can still learn all of these things and be successful, and bring a lot to the table. I think that your background and your experience, like, it's such an advantage to be able to say, a girl who was on my team, she worked at Camilla's House, and they're a really awesome nonprofit in Miami. And so having those skills, like the soft skills, I think that brings so much value, especially when you are looking for work and having to prove that, okay, I used to do this, but this is who I am and I have these skills. That's been, it's been difficult, but really rewarding to, to get through those interviews and, and to show that you're really capable of doing these things. So it's been awesome. I was really inspired by everybody who was in my cohort, like particularly, Maria, who is a mom and has 3 kids. And I'm like, if Maria can do this, like anybody can do this. And I have props for you, John, for going back to school with an entire family and babies on the way. Like, that's a level of discipline that, is really unmatched.
And I also want to establish that I've been keeping count. Todd has made mention of the fact that he's old 3 times so far in the last 40 minutes. So, thank you for adding to that part of the diversity conversation, my friend. I'm a self-deprecating humor guy myself, so I do appreciate that. We only have a few minutes left, so I want to dive into, for each of the institutions you guys are part of, how did you get involved? How can somebody else go get involved? What can you do to learn more, sign up, talk to somebody if you're interested? With that, Todd, we'll go to you, we'll go to John, we'll go to Hannah in that order, and just say, it's like, hey, if Boca Code, if you want to learn more, where do you go and what do you do?
Yeah, awesome. Pitch time, right? So very simple, bocacode.com. If you come to our website, which we're in the midst of redesigning right now, hopefully by the end of the week, we'll have our new version up. But the stuff that's there is just fine. There's upcoming courses, upcoming free workshops. And one of the best ways to get involved is single click join our Slack. We've got a great Slack community. We post jobs, we help each other, like Hannah was saying with the Wyncode alumni Slack, similar kind of thing. We've got a big growing Slack community. We help each other. We post events, we post jobs, and lots of great stuff there. So I recommend, come check out some of our events and and join our Slack. And I wanted to give a quick plug for the Palm Beach Tech Slack too, which I always plug. If you go to palmbeachtech.org/Slack, that's also a really fantastic Slack community to get involved. Great developer resources, jobs, and so forth.
Hannah?
For Wyncode, the easiest way is just wyncode.co, and they are super responsive. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can. I think that Vicky, who's our marketing director, she was on this call earlier, but the best way and the way that I really got excited about Wyncode was doing the Wintroduction. And so it's like a 1-day boot camp on kind of like a mini condensed version of what life at Wyncode would be like. And so you learn how to build a small project and kind of just getting a quick and dirty version of what the boot camp is going to be like. But they're also doing 2 summer programs for kids as well. And that's an area of focus that they're working on right now. So it's kids from 14 to 18. And, the only exposure I had to this was like working on my MySpace when I was like 13. And that's how, I learned how to, the basics of coding. But yeah, it's a really cool opportunity for kids. And they do cohorts every 3 months.
So WGU.edu, that's a great start, though it's not where I started. Like I said earlier, I started with a veterans website about, top places for vets. It drove me to techexams.net, believe it or not. There's a very large WGU community there about asking questions, how do you enroll, things like that. We also have a large Reddit community that's all about, study plans and getting enrolled and, which courses I should take. Tons of questions, tons of answers, tons of, great community involvement there. And just, browsing the website, there's so many degrees, so many different different specialties that you can go, or you could go the route that I did, general, and just, kind of dabble in everything until you find something that you like, which is what happened to me and why I'm in IT security now.
Awesome. And for those who are watching, there is a WGU scholarship that Jessica Joseph just put into the chat that is specific for Florida. It's a partnership between Palm Beach Tech and Tampa Bay Tech that you can go to there. Also, Wyncode Academy has traditionally done a variety of different scholarships over the years, so they do a number of things. And Boca Code, reach out to Todd and Jen. If there are people out there who are looking for a means of education and maybe don't have the financial flexibility enough to do it, still reach out, because there are some options out there, and there are people who are really doing their best to try and make opportunity match up with that. So there is just a few more chats in there for websites and for emails. But for those who are watching online, we have tagged the pages on to Facebook and LinkedIn, so you can watch or click there and learn more. But with that, we're just about at time. But I'd welcome anybody who has any closing thoughts or questions, or just last minute things, just to open the floor, as it were, and hear what anyone would like to say.
I think I'll just give a general pitch, not to Wyncode, not to WGU, not to Boca Code, but just in general, that, if you look at the statistics for people who go through these code schools and go through the educational programs, the salaries that they're making after are significantly higher than where they came from. So on average in 2019, it was about a $22,000 a year boost. That was the average lift that students got, or about a 51% increase in salary. But I really think that the biggest measure that people are excited about getting into this field is not even how much you make that first year out of code school, but where you can go from there. And so, senior developers make like almost surgeon level salaries in some cases. And, if you're stuck in one of these jobs where you're just going to be making 40K a year for the next 30 years, it really is a very attractive option. Whatever route you go, WGU, Wyncode, Ironhack, Boca Code, and there's awesome options out there. They're all really good schools. You got to, see what fits best for you. But really getting into a career in tech is really amazing. And it really is for you. It's for everybody. Like Hannah said, it was really hard at first. She, maybe wasn't sure she can do it, but, with the right instruction and with dedicating her time, and like John said, the self-discipline, anyone can do it if you're passionate about it and really want to, and really put the effort in.
And just to add to that, if you're on the fence about whether or not you have time to do this, you do. I had 2 young children under 7, twin newborns, and I was able to get my bachelor's and my master's. Like Hannah was saying, Maria's mom with 3 kids, if I remember correctly, she was able to do it. You can keep telling yourself you don't have time, you don't have time. You have time. You just have to make the time. And if you don't think you have the self-discipline to do it, you do, and you can.
And Jim just said in the chat that, the technology is exploding in South Florida. So the jobs are there. There are jobs. So, the jobs are there. The pay is there. It's a really great opportunity.
Yeah, and with that, I do want to throw out something else I learned. If you have a hashtag JavaScript crisis, Hannah could probably help you out with that, or at least point you in the right direction. So thank you all so much for joining today. I always find some really good jokes to pull from these conversations at the very, very least. But this was really intriguing to me, just to have the conversation from 3 different perspectives here. With that, thank you all so much. I hope everyone has a really great rest of your Monday, has a really great week. And feel free to reach out if you have any other questions or would like to connect it to anybody. Be glad to do our part to help connect the dots to our tech community. So,
and thanks to Palm Beach Tech, South Florida Tech, for bringing us all together and making us a cohesive community. You guys are amazing.
Doing our part. Have a good one.
Thanks
all.